in the chat box. That is just so amazing. I was commenting to the other moderators in the chat box that I really do need to take a lesson in geography, because I thought maybe some of you were making up some of those names. So many consonants. It was good to see you all, at least by name. And I want to tell you how honored I am that you took the time out of your extremely busy lives to join us here at OUP and other teachers from around the world. Isn't it really cool how, the technology can bring us all together? This is just absolutely crazy. When I was thinking about it, when I was answering my chats the other day, and I actually saw the picture of people. When I was a kid, we used to have this cartoon called the Jetsons, and I feel like I'm in the Jetsons now. But anyway, I want to start by first welcoming teachers, if I have teachers here. I'm expecting that I'm going to have both teachers and school leaders here, and I want to welcome both groups. Even though a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is for educational leaders, I think that it will also be nice for teachers, because we're also going to be able to start conversations in our institutions where we are, to hopefully find that good place, where we're going to be better teachers and better colleagues, and really just better people all the way around. When Kolos was talking about well-being, he had mentioned something that, when we talk about self-care, we think that just because the word self is in self-care, that it means that we're being selfish. But in reality, what we're going to find today is that it's not selfish, because in the end, we're going to see that when we take care of ourselves, we're also taking better care of our students. And when educational leaders are taking care of themselves, they're also taking care of their teachers. So it's kind of like this domino effect that I have here, right? High teacher well-being enhances student learning. We know that. We know that from research, everybody. Rafi, right? I mean, it's out there. If I go in and I'm motivated and I go in there really high and really enthusiastic, that's the kind of response I get, right? If I'm not in that well-being place and I come back and I go into my class and I'm kind of, grumpy, well, then that's what I get back, right? I get grumpy right back. So that also transfers to leaders, right? When our leaders feel high well-being, it supports the teacher's education, the ability of teachers to teach. So I just want everybody to know that it's a domino effect. And when teachers are good, students are good. When students are good, teachers are good. When leaders are good, teachers are good. So let's all join hands and sing Kumbaya, right? So one of the things that's interesting about well-being and the pandemic is that the pandemic has really created some really weird boundaries. It's gotten really quirky, everybody. The boundaries have gotten really quirky. I've mentioned before in another webinar about the boundaries that we have, that they can be physical in terms of, we're at school or we're at home, and we know where each of those are. And those boundaries can be flexible or permeable, right? We can allow them to blend into one another, or we don't. But you know what, when we're in the pandemic, and some of us are still teaching from home. I'm still teaching from home. I'm in the United Arab Emirates. I'm at the American University of Sharjah, and we're online now, and we'll probably be online through the spring. So what used to be my office is now my dining room table. Boundaries are also temporal for educators and for teachers. When we go to school from 8 o'clock and we're home at 5 o'clock, and that's sometimes our work day. Some of us bring work home, so that boundary is very flexible. And the third thing that the pandemic does is it gives us a kind of a quirky psychological boundary too. When we're at school, we have a psychological way of being and thinking, and when we're at home, we have another way. But now we're at home, we're at school, and we're at home, and so those boundaries get really, really mixed up. So that kind of affects our well-being, right? Because that work-life balance that we thought we once had, well, Bye-bye. So let's start there. So now what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at characteristics of positive institutions. When we talk about positive institutions, we're going to take a look at it through the rigor of psychological research. And in psychological research, they talk about positive emotions, they talk about positive traits, and they also talk about positive institutions. And the research on it is quite rigorous. And so we're going to be taking a look at what does it mean to be a leader in a positive institution. I also want us to take a look together at what are proactive measures that we can do to help teachers in pandemic times, as well as in other times. I mean, there's some overlap. And I also want to talk about providing space for teachers to reach their potential. And when I talk about that space, it's not just the physical space, but it's also the temporal, the time space, as well as the psychological space, you know, the autonomy that teachers really need to be their best. Okay, so here we go, everybody. Okay, we need to talk about leadership alongside teacher well-being, because teachers cannot do it alone. There's only so far that we can be as teachers without needing the institutional support. Self-care is something that we can all do for ourselves, but that's not all, right? Self-care isn't the end-all be-all for well-being. We're going to need some help. And we're going to need to have our well-being prioritized. I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for all of my life. I kind of cross the boundary a little bit because sometimes I'm also a leader. I've coordinated programs and I've directed programs, all staying within academia though. And so I've always been very close. If I do take a leadership role, it's still a leader of teachers. And so sometimes I'm a teacher, sometimes I'm a leader, and sometimes I'm a leader of teachers. But what we need to do is make sure that we're all working as a team to prioritize our well-being, both socially, culturally, politically, institutionally, right? I mean, it can't be that we can have well-being within ourselves and find that perfect, good space, and then the minute we step out the door of our house, suddenly, you know, the profession of teaching is no longer respected, right? So that's not good for our well-being. So politically and socially, it means something. Right? It's hard to find well-being when when we don't make enough money to put food on the table, right? Or pay the bus ticket. Okay, so now we're going to be interweaving these two strands, and we're going to be looking at teacher personal pathways to self-care. And Sarah talked a lot about that in her opening plenary. I'm going to spend a little bit more time than Sarah did on talking about the systemic levels of positive change that we need. But you'll notice, just like this rope, you see that rope there? You see each rope is intertwined, right? But so is all these ropes that are intertwined together. So that was kind of my metaphor. I mean, we're all in this together and everything is inextricably intertwined, right? And so I need my leaders, my fellow leaders and my fellow teachers to understand that we can't do it alone. Okay, onward, forward. Okay, what does it mean to have a positive workplace? Davis, 2013. This is where individuals flourish and organizations thrive. Flourishing. That's good. That was a phrase. That was good. Flourishing. Let's call it flourishing, right? Individual well-being defines as and is defined by institutional well-being. Okay, I'm talking about that interweave. Positive organizational scholarship, that's POS. Hey, did you know that's actually a subdiscipline of organizational psychology, okay? And it explores what institutions can do to foster well-being and positive workplace cultures via individual and collective strengths. Yes, people, yes, friends, yes, kindreds in education. People study this. They study what we can do to foster well-being and positivity in the workplace. And that's what we're going to look at today. And so this isn't just anecdotal stuff that I'm throwing off the top of my head, okay? We're going to look at four main areas today. We're going to look at positive human resource practices. We're going to look at positive organizational practices. We're going to look at leadership, that's positive, and relationships in the workplace that are also positive, okay? So we're going to go in that order, and you're going to see headings for each of those, and we'll have those kinds of transitions so you'll know when I'm moving from one point to the next. Okay, here we go. Positive HR practices, everybody. First slide. Human resource practices. Institutions implement supportive measures for. These are what we're going to look at. Opportunities for growth through continuing professional development. Okay. Socialization of new staff. And teachers' well-being, and that is what leaders can do to help teachers find that work-life balance. Because you know what, for as much as we do as teachers, as individuals, that work-life balance is going to be very much affected by those who are kind of mandating from the top, or I would prefer leading from the top better, right? Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look first at continuing professional development. This promotes positive well-being. Why? Why does continuing professional development foster well-being? Well, you know what, we're teachers, right? So what do we thrive on? We thrive on new knowledge and expanding our skills, right? So when we have those opportunities for growth and further development, we're finding meaning and purpose in it, right? However, did you notice that I entitled this slide, I used the adjective suitable. So that's an operative term, suitable. So what do I mean by suitable? I mean relevant. If I asked for a show of hands right now, how many of you had been asked to go to professional development that had absolutely no relevance for you as a teacher? Bet maybe 99% of us would raise our hands. And you know what? Irrelevant professional development is, you know, we're busy people, right? And so when that's irrelevant, please, please, just give me more time to grade my papers, right? So leaders, what does it mean to have suitable CPD? It means listening to your teachers and what their needs are. Teachers know what is relevant to their tasks, what's relevant to what they need. So when we use the word suitable professional development, it means listen to your teachers and what they need, because I'll tell you something, when it's good, it's really good, because teachers love to keep learning. That's why we're in this business, right? Okay. Now, for leaders, what does suitable CPD signal? When it's suitable and you're supporting it, it means that you appreciate and you're committed to professionalism and lifelong learning. It sends your teachers a very, very strong message. Hey, you know what? I'm supporting your professionalism and your lifelong learning because I'm going to send you, I would like to support you in time and resources for you to go and learn something that is relevant for you and your learners, right? But what is the snowball effect? It's because, you know what, not everybody can go to all of the CPD, the whole school's not going to shut down and let everybody go. But what could be cooler than an excited and enthusiastic teacher coming back from CPD and saying, hey, can I have 10 minutes at the next department meeting to tell you the absolutely cool things that I learned? And then the teacher becomes a trainer of teachers, and those teachers take it on and they learn it and they take it back to their classrooms, and it becomes a snowball effect, right? How cool is that, right? Now, I also mentioned in the first slide on HR, on human resources, that another thing that works with positive organizational sentiments is a warm welcome to teachers, the new ones particularly, right? All of us have had to start at a new place, at a new school at some point. At some point we were new. Leaders, you were also new at the school you went into. Maybe you were a teacher at the school that you now have a leadership position in. But you know what? Every single institution has its own little quirks. And training in what makes your institution quirky is really a good thing, right? I mean, when I changed from the university I was at, the University of Northern Iowa in the US, to AUS, the American University of Sharjah now, you know what? Even though AUS is an American university and we follow American patterns of education and curriculum, you know, there's some quirky things that this university does, quirky in a great way. But the way that we input grades, you know, the way that we change classrooms, just, you know, the strange things that are everyday things that, you know, you have to learn somehow. And it's not a lot nicer if I'm kind of filled in on that right away without having to learn it the hard way, right? Mentor up, everybody, mentor up. But I always say there's only one thing worse than not having a mentor, and that's having a bad mentor. So leaders, be very careful in the way that you're connecting up mentors with mentees. But there's also some really cool research that says that both the mentors and the mentees benefit. So when those mentors and those mentees are brought together as kindreds and they create a strong bond and a strong relationship, there's beautiful things for both of them. Scheduling, everybody. New teachers coming into a new place, if there's a way to take something off their plate at the beginning of the semester, take it off their plates. There was a policy at my old university that knew that professors coming in got a course release the first semester so that they could learn a little bit more, right? So that they could figure it out, right? Informal get-togethers. You know what? Just, you know what? Having going out after school for a coffee and a donut and just talking about, the kids and the dog and the cat and how you're doing and how, the bus ride to school in the morning. When informal get-togethers are formally scheduled, particularly from the leadership, that signals to your new teachers, hey, I'm being welcomed here, and they care that I am picked up personally by the staff that's already here. And then finally, walk in their shoes, right? New teachers, walk in their shoes. Remember what it was like the first day? Egad, particularly novice teachers. Look, experienced teachers going to new schools, that's bad enough. But novice teachers going to their first new job, that's horrifying. That's horrifying. So please, walk in their shoes and remember what it was like your first day of your first professional job. Okay? Old timers, we need appreciation too, please. You know what? Leaders, you have no idea what a genuine compliment. Just, hey, you did a great job well done. Maybe just thank you. Recognizing extra effort and providing encouragement for fresh ideas. Wow. You know what? Let people's innovation and creativity flow. Hey, that might be a weird idea, but you know what? That's a weird idea, really weird idea. But you know what? Thanks for sharing, right? That's what leaders do. That's what positive leaders do. And old timers, you hang in there, because if your leaders are at this webinar, maybe on Monday they'll write you a quick email and say, hey, I appreciate you. Old timers need loving too. Okay. Now, what does it mean when CPD is tailored to specific needs? I need leaders to ask these questions, because you know what? We love professional development, we really do, but you need to protect me. You need to protect your teachers. Here we go. If you're sending me on professional development, do I have to sacrifice my free time for that? When are these meetings scheduled? Yeah. If you're going to do CPD, is there a beginning time and an end time so that I can still have a life and still plan around it? Or do you just expect me to be there for 12 hours? Okay. How much paperwork do I have to do? Are you going to make me fill out a request, a per diem? Do I have to do a written report when I get back? If there's so much paperwork that it takes me 3 hours to fill it out, add that to my schedule too, right? When deadlines are looming and there's some really good CPD, can you just say, hey, you know what? I understand that some deadlines are looming. Let me help you take something off your plate. Hey, Are lunch breaks actually break time? Can you respect that as a break time, or do I have to go and do playground duty, right? And how do you regulate and assign overtime? Well, is it paid overtime? Then I'll do it. If it's not paid overtime, how is that regulated? How is that assigned, right? So you need to be asking these questions, everybody. Or leaders, you need to be asking these questions, because I'll tell you, we teachers, we ask them. Okay. Guys, look at this. Positive institutions respect teachers' time. That's research-based. I'm not making that up. I'm not making that up. And you know what? Teachers' work is especially seasonal. If you're going to ask me to do lunch duty when I've got finals to grade and I've got 25 people in my writing class and they've just written their first 5-paragraph essay, and you want me to do lunch duty. Okay, so remember that the work is particularly seasonal. You know what? If there's a way that during the semester that you can actually take a look at, and knowing that those last 3 weeks are critical times for grading and for parent-teacher conferences and for work that needs to be made up and for all of these other things, and you can schedule the things that can be rescheduled, that is respecting your teacher's time, because you know that those last 3 weeks are just incredibly horrible, right? So, well, horrible, but also good, because it's a time that we get to provide feedback for our students. And hopefully that feedback is a time of celebration of what the students have actually learned, right? So, yeah. Okay. I'm moving on now to practices, okay? What are some positive organizational practices? We're going to consider a couple things. We're going to look at organizational institutional structures, and we're going to look at available resources. Okay. Guys, leaders, these are things that you might just kind of, you know that they're part of the job, but you might not realize how important they are for teachers when they're actually trying to make the work-life balance happen, right? So how are classes assigned? Do you listen to your teacher's input? Do you pay attention to who had the tougher classes, who had the larger groups, right? Who had the early schedules, who had the late schedules? The distribution of additional responsibilities. Does everybody always have to do the bus duty and the lunch duty, or are those redistributed, right? Overtime options, like I said, how are those distributed? Do teachers want them? Do you ask for volunteers first? Job security, that's a huge one, everybody, particularly during the pandemic. You know, Sarah and I have been doing research on language teachers during COVID and their coping strategies. And we've realized that a huge problem in teacher well-being is the insecurity of language teachers' jobs, right? Teacher schedules, how are those made? Length of breaks between classes. You know, can your teacher use a bathroom break, a restroom break? Is there time to run to the teacher's lounge and grab a cup of coffee, right? Meeting protocol. Do the dominant people talk on top of one another? Are there any kinds of regulations and rules for respecting everybody's voice? Pathways of communication. You know, do I know who I talk to? I mean, if I've got a problem, who do I go to, and what is the chain of command? What kind of feedback am I given, and do I give feedback to? Is there a system for me to be able to say what things I'm disgruntled with? Is there a system of complaints? Is there a whole school policy for student behavior? And if I have to call a student out, will my leaders have my back? And then last, during the pandemic, this one was a big one for me. What are the obligations for synchronous versus asynchronous class time, right? It's a big deal. Okay, Now, let's consider teachers' well-being. We're going to consider the structure, organization, and management, but effective action also involves structuring the environment and daily practices. Okay, it's in the daily stuff. It's in the daily stuff. It's in the daily, day-to-day stuff that we as individuals, we feel respected. It's in the daily things that we feel, whether we're happy or not, whether we have life beyond our work, and generally whether or not we feel that somebody's got our backs, right? Okay, let's take a look at available resources. That's another thing that we said we were going to look at under this heading. And positive educational organizations supply material resources and physical space. And now, everybody, isn't it true that the pandemic completely redefines these needs? Physical space, right? I mean, some of us are not meeting face-to-face with students because we cannot meet 2 meters apart from each other in the physical space that's available in the buildings that we have, right? So these available resources are crazily toppled when it comes to the pandemic. So let's take a look at that. Do we have what we really need? A lot of us are looking now at teaching online. You know, do we have the physical resources? Do we have the bandwidth for our computers? Do we have the computers? Do we have the software? You know, the question is, you know, now we're spending 8 hours in front of our computers at home, and we're sitting in a kitchen chair that usually is meant for sitting for 20 minutes and not 8 hours. So, you know, do I have a chair that works with the symmetry of my back? All kinds of crazy consultation and consideration that needs to be done now during the pandemic, right? And am I being consulted on my needs? You know, do the resources of the school, of course they're limited, right? Leaders, we know that our resources are limited. We understand that. But now we need to know, am I being consulted in the way that the resources are being dispersed? Maybe, could you ask me? Could you ask what I need? And maybe if I can't have that, could you tell me why? Could you say, thank you for your input, but you know what, we've got only this much money? Or, you know what, we've got this platform that we're using, and we looked at these other platforms, and this one was the best one. Can you explain that to me? Okay. Just, teachers we're good people. We went into teaching because we're good people, right? So just ask us once in a while. Okay, did you know? Research suggests that the physical space is 30% of an employee's experience, right? And this might seem like a little thing, and I bet some cultures are better at this than others, but even just a plant in the teacher's room, maybe a pot of coffee, you know, maybe just chairs that are organized in a way that is good for social interaction, right? Maybe, I don't know, maybe you could just think of some ways to make your workplace more satisfactory for you, right? I know that my husband and I, we turned our living room into an office. My dining room table really doesn't have chairs around it anymore, right? I've made the space for me now. Nobody can come over, it's COVID. So we change our spaces. We make our spaces work for what we have, right? And so at school or at home, see what you can do. But your physical space is important. It really is. We're going to talk now about positive leadership. This is our third point of 4. Okay. Leadership, your directional style has an effect on our well-being, on staff well-being, and on the overall organizational climate, right? Your style of directing people will affect every individual. And there are 4 things that researchers suggest make a leader transformative, make a leader positive, make him revered, him or her. Also, for example, if we're talking about idealized influence, We're talking about being a positive role model. If you wield idealized influence, it means that you're being a role model for your teachers to be good leaders. And so you model leadership for your teachers to model, that go into the classroom and model leadership for their students. Are you that kind of leader? Are you a role model? Inspirational motivation. Do you have, as a leader, a clear vision to inspire, to motivate, and to create a team spirit? Is your vision clear? If it's not, clarify it. Do you maintain individual consideration of every single person under your tutelage? That means, do you support the uniqueness of every single individual so that they can actually self-actualize, that they can reach their personal dreams and visions for themselves and for their teaching and for their students? I have a very personal, I have a way that I need to self-actualize, and I know that if I can go into my classroom, I can be that person and be better for my students. Will my leaders do that for me? Will they help me be that person? Okay. And finally, are you a transformative leader because you, in your teachers, have a role of an intellectual stimulator? That means, do you encourage your teachers' creativity or innovation? The worst thing that a leader can do is squash that creativity and innovation. By nature, teachers are creative and innovative. That's why we chose this profession. Every single person in this room, we're kindreds because we chose education. And if we chose education, we believe ourselves to be innovators because that's what educators do. We innovate and we create. So leaders, let us do that. Give us the space. Now, we're going to positive relationships. Okay, the first thing that positive relationships do is that they create psychological safety. And that might seem kind of a funny thing to say, psychological safety. What's that? Well, it's a climate in which people are comfortable expressing and being themselves. They feel comfortable sharing concerns and their mistakes without fear of embarrassment or retribution. Do you create that as a leader in your school, right? Can I say what I think? And can I be myself, right? You know what? I think that teachers need to wear their quirkiness as a badge of honor. I tell my students the first thing, my students are actually going to be teachers. So I'm a teacher educator. So my students are teachers. And the first thing I tell them on the first day of class, every single time I have a new group of students, is I cannot tell you how to teach because that's coming from within you. I can only give you some tools from which you choose so that you can walk into that classroom and be authentically you. Because the minute you try to be and to teach in a way that is not authentically you, you are betraying yourself and your students will know a phony the minute you walk in. So now, my question to leaders, are you letting your teachers exert their quirkiness? Are you letting them be the people that they are authentically? Because I'll tell you, they'll be a lot better when they've got that psychological safety to exercise their profession in the way that emanates from their souls. Do you allow a teacher to come forward and tell you, hey, you know what? I tried this lesson plan and it was awful. I screwed it up. I'm never going to do that again. And then we all laugh and we say, okay, we won't do that one again, right? But are you giving your teachers the space to try new things? We need to be doing that. And we don't need to feel embarrassed or feel retribution because we went out on a limb and tried something new. We tried something innovative. We tried to engage our students. You know what? So now, leader, give us the space to do that. Okay? We need psychological safety, right? And if we know that we can say, I screwed up, and that we know that our boss is going to say, well, oops, that's okay. And I think that students probably appreciate a teacher that said, well, this isn't working. So halfway through class, it's happened to me. Halfway through class, oh, I've lost engagement here. Okay, guys, what do we need to do? We got to switch in midstream here. I've lost you all. Okay, what do we need to do? Right? We all do that. Now, I'm telling you straight out, that happens to me. So now, will my boss give me the space to tell him, that class was awful? My boss does. My boss lets me do that. Okay, I wonder if he's here. I sent him a link. Okay, 3 stages of psychological safety. Do you communicate purpose and expectations as a leader? These are the ways that you create the psychological safety that I'm talking to you about. You want to create psychological safety, you need to communicate your purpose and your expectations. You need to invite participation. Fernanda, I just saw what you wrote in the chat box. Thank you. Okay, you need to, leaders, invite participation. Ask your teachers to participate. Let them have a voice in the leadership. Don't be intimidated by teachers who have opinions. We're teachers because we do have opinions. Okay? And then respond to output, or output, to input. Respond to input. You know, leaders, even if you don't like the input, at least respond to it. Well, thanks for your input. It's better than not saying anything. At least you can say, thanks for your input. Don't think I'll use it, but I appreciate it. Okay. Communicate purpose and expectations, invite participation, respond to input. Okay. That's how you create psychological safety. Okay. Now, this is scary. This is really scary. Because I'm going to ask leaders. I'm going to ask leaders to admit when they don't know something. I'm going to ask leaders to disclose when they've screwed up. And I'm going to ask leaders to share their feelings, when they celebrate, when they feel inspired with their teachers. Because when you can do those things, when you make yourself vulnerable along with your teachers, you're actually going to gain their respect. Because that kind of self-disclosure will bring you closer to them, and they're going to do a better job for you because they like you, right? Self-disclosure brings that relationship a little closer. And if you think that leadership is that transformative leaders are the ones that sit in their ivory tower and look down upon the peasants and dictate orders from above, well, you probably don't know what they're saying in the teacher's lounge. So valuable questions for leaders to ask in this show of vulnerability. What can I do to help you? When was the last time you asked your teachers, what can I do for you? What are your concerns? Do you have some concerns? Is there anything that I can do to help you meet your needs? What are your needs, in fact? Maybe I don't even know your needs. What concerns you right now? And then, how about this one? What are you up against? What are you up against right now? Any problem students? Do you need anything? What are you up against? What kind of things are going on? Right? And that when they give you their answers, it's not used in a way that's going to be prejudicial. Perjudicar. I wanted to use that verb in Spanish and I couldn't make it happen in English. Okay, now let's look at the culture of your organization. When we say culture of an organization, we're talking about something that looks like this. So this is particular to organizations, okay? So we're not talking about culture in terms of intercultural communications necessarily. I'm talking in this case about the culture of your organization. Culture is a set of living relationships working toward a shared goal. Let me say that again. Culture is a set of living relationships working toward a shared goal. It's not something you are, it's something that you do. Whoa. Is that powerful or what? Culture isn't something you are. It's not something you are. It's something you do. We together create a relationship that works towards a shared goal. And in sharing that goal and working together, we are creating culture. And that's the culture of our organization, right? It's not something you are. We are not a culture. It is something that we do. We work together towards a shared goal, and that's what our aim is in this school. And we need leaders who are going to lead us on that mission. We need to be living and working in relationships that share a goal. And I would hope that those goals are shared goals between teachers and their administrations, right? Because it's a lot easier to work towards a goal when that goal is one that you had input in. Okay? Now let's take a look at identifying with your workplace. Okay, because that's an important thing for your professional well-being. Your professional well-being, you need to be able to feel like you are one with your workplace, that you belong there. Okay? And we're going to talk for a minute about this person, environment, fit theory. Okay? Stress and well-being, either side of the continuum, emerge from the relationship between a person's characteristics and their environmental conditions. Sure, you are a unique individual, but that unique individual that is you is inserted into a situational context, which is work. The question is, how easily do you as the person fit into that contextual situation that is your school? Okay? So now, what does a good fit mean? A good fit is when you feel like you are the round peg in the round hole, right? When you're the square peg in the round hole, your level of job satisfaction is going to go down, and so is your level of commitment. So the idea here is that you find that identity with where you're working. Now there's a role that leaders play in this. Look at this really cool visual I've got down there, right? You know what? We've got a huge problem. And it's not just the global COVID-19 pandemic. It's also the pandemic that we have that's called teacher burnout. Teachers across the world are burning out, and they're precipitously withdrawing from the profession because they think that the profession is a poor fit. But you know what? I will bank on the fact, because this is researched, I will bank on the fact that it's not the profession that's the problem, but their specific institution or the work context that isn't working. So teachers are dropping out of the teaching profession because they don't feel like teaching is a good thing, but it might not be that it's teaching. For some reason, teachers got into the profession. You chose that profession. You were motivated. You felt that you were going to find your personal meaning and purpose in your life's work, in your vocation, right? But then suddenly you feel this burnout. I can't do this anymore. Teaching isn't for me. But what we really have to do as teachers and as leaders is to identify what is that source of misfitting. Is it because you don't like teaching? Or is it because you're not the right fit for the institution to which you belong? And leaders, if it is a misfit between the person and the institution, is there something that you can do to create a better fit? I don't know. That's a very individual question. But it's a question worth asking. And it's a question worth asking for each individual teacher, as well as the leaders in the school. Now, how can we, as leaders, create an identity, or for teachers to build their identity with their institution? How can we do this? You know what? These things might seem like a silly, well, that's very insignificant. But you know what? It's not. These things on this list aren't insignificant, because when you're on the receiving end of these things, it's not insignificant, right? When there's a Hall of Fame board in the staff room and your picture goes up, that feels really good, because somebody recognizes, hey, I did a good job. So leaders, you know what? That might take 5 minutes of your day. Well, it might take half an hour for you first to develop the criteria and find a way to choose that person that gets it every week or month. But it's nothing for you to go take a picture with your camera, go get and put that picture up on the bulletin board. Pick out your criteria. What makes a great teacher? And make a Hall of Fame, because you have no idea how good that feels, right? Post on social media or mention in a newsletter. You know, call people by name. Hey, this teacher took her students and read to children at the orphanage. You know, congratulations to Miss Gloria for taking her senior class to go and work in the food pantry. Miss Gloria, we love you. Thank you for that. Right? Teaching awards. You know what? The last university I was at, I won the Regents Award for teaching. And it was one of these things where it was the award across 3 state universities. And I mean, it might seem insignificant, but it made my year. I mean, it was like, wow, for a whole year, I was the Regents selection. It felt so good, right? Bonuses. Your school might not have money for that, but hey, you know what? Maybe it's the simple thing of a You Rock cupcake. You know, just anything, just a recognition, right? Recognition of a teacher's project in a staff meeting. Hey, you know what? If a teacher went on professional development, hey, you know what? Thank you, Mr. Donald, for going to that meeting, right? Thank you for going to that professional development. Would you like to share something? And then, of course, there is the World Teacher Day, right? There's World Teacher Day. You know, there's World English Day. There's World Everything Day, right? Get involved in those. Show your appreciation. And as a leader, you know what? I'll bet you have a secretary too. So don't forget her. And I'll bet you have custodians too. And there are custodian days too. So, you know, World Appreciation of Custodians. Yeah, and teachers, you do that too. Teachers get involved in the custodian days and the secretary days. When I first started teaching, my mentor teacher at my university told me, Tammy, the way to be successful is to become friends with the secretary of the boss and the janitor. Oh, and the AV person in the library, the audiovisual person in the library. She told me, make friends with those 3 people. And I have, at every place I've gone. It was very good advice. Okay, organizational commitment. This is the idea that we have. How much do teachers bond with, connect to, and identify with the institutional goals? Now, I'm going to explain something here that is the opposite of what we usually look at. And I know my time is running out, so I do want to have some time for questions, but I want to talk about just a couple more things. Absenteeism, we know what that is, right? Absenteeism is when we just kind of call into work even though we're not very sick. Do you know what presenteeism is? Presenteeism is when you go to work even when you're sick. Presenteeism is what workaholics do. Leaders, watch for that. Watch for those teachers who are doing too much, because I'll guarantee that'll end up in burnout. At some point, there's going to be like can't do this anymore, right? Leaders, those teachers that you're so proud of because they're workaholics, cherish them, take care of them, right? It's called presenteeism. And in the teaching profession, just like Kolos said at the beginning, Kolos was mentioning, you know what, we're a caring profession. We do things because we care. And because we care so much, we go above and beyond. Okay? Okay, this is being a martyr to the job. And what do we do then? We've got to have conversations about mental health. We've got to create a policy for time off and make sure that teachers, when they have time off, are actually taking time off. Maybe having some working from home options. You know, Wednesday afternoons off so that you can get caught up on your grading. That's what my school used to do. And then maybe swapping out hours with a colleague. Positive working relationships create that sense of belonging. And when we're happy at work, when we're happier, colleagues who work together are going to be happier at work. Allow teachers to choose with whom they want to collaborate and inspire those collaborations. Encourage your teachers to find a trusted colleague, because when you've got teams of teachers working together, it's going to increase their well-being, both professionally and personally, I guarantee it. Research suggests the same thing. Okay, now mentorship inspires professional well-being, and I talked about this, both early career and mid to late career teachers. So leaders, work on this. Work on developing these mentorships. Allow teachers to decide who they want to mentor with. I used the strategy once of doing mentors with mentees based upon their signature strengths. It was a beautiful study that we did, but find some characteristics in common so that you're not bringing opposites together. Allow kindreds to work together. Now, the last slide. I want you to encourage teachers to become a part of a larger team. Your teachers need to become part of the school, the country, and the global community. This means, everybody, incite and inspire teachers to become part of professional organizations and to join groups like the Oxford University Press, the webinars that they do, the teacher training that they do, all of these things. What are the benefits? The connectedness, the identity with people who think like they do. I mean, you're meeting with language teachers. I mean, do you know how connected I feel right now in the identity that I have working with people from 100 different countries here in the chat box? I mean, that's a benefit for me, right? And you provide information that's current, both to leaders and to your colleagues when you come to these webinars and you go to professional development and you incorporate yourself into these professional institutions. And then, of course, it provides social support. Okay, that's it. That's all I have for today. I've got 7 minutes for questions. I would love to have a question. I'll go up here into my chat box. Question from Nadra. How do you ensure the well-being of all teachers when you have a large team to manage, right? You know what? I'll tell you something. One thing is definitely make sure that leaders are, because we're grouped, we are grouped in our institutions. And so we do have grouped meetings, right? The least you can do is make sure that you attend 2 or 3 of those meetings every semester so that you can answer teachers' direct questions. If it's a huge institution and the best you can do is go to those group meetings, that's the best you can do. But if you have a smaller institution or you're the leader of like a department, those one-on-one things that you can ask for at the beginning of every semester. At the beginning of every semester here where I work, my department chair calls me in and he asks me, Tammy, what do you want to accomplish this semester? Because I want to be there for you. What do you need from me? Once a semester, he does that. And that means a lot to me. And once a semester, my dean comes into our department meetings and he says, I'm available for your questions and for anything that you need from me. I'm here for you right now. So that's a hard question to answer based on the fact that I don't know how large your institution is or how many people you're actually leading. Okay. Sixto asks, how can teachers be sure of students' well-being? Well, you know what? There's not a sure way of doing that. But I can tell you for one thing, when you're taking care of your own well-being, when you're taking self-care and you're in a good place yourself and you go into the classroom in a good place, that's one way to make sure that your students at least are going to be partially there. If you're taking a look at what you do for your own self-care, think about how you can ask your students to do the same. Are you giving your students a chance in the evening? Are you talking to them about their wellness? Are you talking to them, for example, language teachers? Are we using a curriculum that talks about food groups and we talk about nutrition at the same time? You know, we're with Oxford University Press. We're talking about global skills, everybody. Is there a way to weave these global skills into our language teaching? Go to the global skills paper that's online with OUP. It's absolutely amazing. Sarah Mercer was one of the writers, one of the authors of that paper. And I know that Oxford University Press is trying very hard to create materials that allow you as language teachers to teach language and global skills simultaneously. So it's not overburdening you as a teacher with doing two separate things. So stay tuned to Oxford University Press and some of the things that they're going to be publishing soon about weaving global skills into language teaching. Those global skills are all about well-being, okay? Okay, another question. What if you just joined the school and find out that the owner of the school doesn't really have intentions to develop the school and the teachers? I suppose the right answer to that question would be give it a shot and do what you can to change those intentions. And you're going to be the only one. You yourself are going to be the only one who can decide whether or not it's worth hanging out there and doing your best, or whether you have other options, right? I think that that's an extremely personal question. But for real, we've been talking today about what leaders need to do to inspire their teachers' well-being. And it sounds to me, Mustalifa, that it sounds to me like the owner of your school isn't taking the proper measures. So maybe you could invite him to to our next webinar. I could call him out personally. No, joking. Okay. What kind of data collection tools can be used to measure, evaluate teacher well-being? Asli, I love that question. First of all, Asli, what I would do is ask teachers to go to VIA.org, and have them do their signature strengths. Have your teachers, especially if you're the leader of teachers, this is the coolest thing ever. Go to VIA.org. It's a free survey, and the teachers can go and find out what their strengths are. And then as a leader, you can talk to them about ways that they can use their signature strengths in their teaching and in their leadership in school to be able to be the best people they are. There is also a direct measure of well-being called PERMA, PERMA, positive emotion, relationships, meaning, achievement, or accomplishment. And that is also something that you can find online. It's called PERMA, PERMA. Google the PERMA survey, and that directly measures the well-being in terms of their personal well-being. But of course, it's that personal well-being that's going to be influencing their professional well-being. Okay, good. Next question. I have one more question. What are some instances of applicable measures taken for teacher well-being? Okay, gosh, applicable measures. But for the teacher herself or himself in terms of self-care, I highly recommend the book that Sarah and I put out on language on teacher well-being. The whole book, except for the second chapter, which is for leaders, is all about well-being for self-care for teachers. And the second chapter is on the well-being for leaders and what leaders can do for their teachers. That leadership chapter number 2 in the teacher well-being book is a summary of everything I presented today. So that's all the time I have. Okay. That was fun. Okay. Hello, moderators. Thank you guys for attending. It was so much fun for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Oh.
Yeah. Thank you, Tammy. It was really so much fun. I can I can tell you that. I'm sure you've kept an eye on the chat box, and you could see all the amazing feedback and reaction you got from all these lovely people around the world. I'm sure it was a very, very engaging, very relevant webinar today, and thank you for all the people who had to get up very early just to join us. And I hope I hope is not the good word. I'm sure it was not a waste of time for you. Just a couple of questions. Yes, Naomi put the link for the book where you can actually buy the book Teacher Wellbeing by Sarah Mercer and Tammy Gregerson. And if you're not convinced yet, well, you will never be. that is, oh, okay, there's a match. Hi, Tammy. So yeah, it's more important than ever, and I don't think you can really overemphasize the importance to look after yourselves as teachers, and for managers to make this available, make the opportunities available for teachers to look after themselves. Right, I will sign off soon. Just 2 things. Don't forget you will receive the certificate of attendance within 5 working days of today's webinar, if you were with us today. And another thing, let me just pop up this survey link once again here, so you can feedback on your experience from this webinar. I thank you for joining us today, and I hope you have a nice day and enjoy the rest of the day, and looking forward to see you at another professional development event from Oxford University Press. Bye, everyone.